All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rekha Kodesh. Double honors to the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. Yeah, just wanted to have a couple of precepts here, and I wanted to go through, a quick lesson. All right, dealing with the split. All right, of the kingdom. All right, the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. All right, and ultimately going into the deportation. All right, the history behind. All right, what we read about in the book of Second Kings. All right, and amongst other precepts, because when you actually read the history itself on this topic, you'll find the information there, but there's actual scriptures, verses in here that describe exactly what happened with the names of the individuals. All right, that are in there. You see, a lot of people like to as even sometimes when you read in the secular history, they'll like to put certain books in the Bible or certain verses as fictional, you know. But here it is. You'll take different manuscripts and different obelisks and cylinders that were written, in the past. That those are historically accurate. But when we have a historical record in the Bible, that one they just want to disregard. All right, but it's important to know that history, all right, concerning, the split of the northern and the southern kingdom, you know, because you look at the northern kingdom now, majority, I mean, yeah, the majority of them are here in the Americas, all right, but how did they get here? Because when you do the history and you go back, we all, were dwelling in the land of Israel at one point, you know, so now I'm gonna start from. All right, this is gonna be after the kingdom has already split, because when you read in the book of Kings, you had King David, then you had King Solomon, all right, and then after King Solomon was when the kingdom was split, because of his son, Rehoboam, all right, and you had Jeroboam, which Jeroboam wasn't his son, but Jeroboam was who the northern tribe or the northern kingdom had selected to be their their king, so to speak. So what you had now was a divided kingdom, all right, which at times would also go to war or go back and forth with each other. So that's when you deal within that time period, you have the kings of Judah and then you have the kings of Israel. Okay, so we're gonna go into starting here in the book of Second Kings, because I mean, eventually, all right, Jake's wickedness got so bad, the Lord got both kingdoms out of the land. All right, both of them got deported. Okay, but it first started with the northern kingdom, and since the northern kingdom, got deported, they haven't, as a whole, been back in that land since. All right, now we're gonna start here in the book of Second Kings, chapter 15. All right, verse 19. Actually, I'll start at verse 17. So it says, in the 9 and 30th year of Azariah, king of Judah, so in the 39th year, all right, of Azariah, king of Judah, began Menahem, the son of Gadai, to reign over Israel. All right, and that Israel is not talking about Israel as a whole, but the northern kingdom. All right, also known as the kingdom of Israel. All right, and then the southern kingdom, also known as the kingdom of Judah. Right, so it says here, and reigned 10 years in Samaria, and he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord. He departed not all his days from the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, who made Israel to sin. Now, why does it always make reference back to Jeroboam? Because Jeroboam, all right, when after he was, made basically king over the 10 tribes, in fear, that when the 10 tribes, the northern kingdoms, when you have to go keep certain holy days, when you have to go back to Jerusalem, to keep those holy days, in fear that when they would go back to keep those holy days, they would they would repent, and they would just be like, this beef that they have with the southern kingdom is unnecessary. He feared that. And he feared that if that was the case, because the southern kingdom, the temple, all right, in Jerusalem, is in, you could say, the portion or jurisdiction of the southern kingdom, right? So if the northern kingdom goes down there to worship, to keep the Passover, to keep the what's that, the Feast of Weeks, you know, they could eventually be like, you know what, let's just go into Rehoboam. It's not that bad. So in fear, all right, in Jeroboam fearing that, he set up, I believe it was 2 golden calves, and he told the northern kingdom that these are your gods, all right, that these are the gods that brought you out of Egypt, so worship them. So you don't got to go, all right, all the way down, to Jerusalem. So that caused Israel to go up, especially the northern kingdom, and that caused them to commit a great sin before the Lord. All right, and the Lord was extremely unhappy with that. And that's why when you read throughout the different kings, it always refers back to Jeroboam. He departed not from the sins of Jeroboam, his father, the son of the son of Nebat. All right. So dealing now with Menahem, it says here, verse 19, and Pul, the king of Assyria, came against the land. Now, when you look up Pul, all right, his secular name that you'll find is Tiglath-Pileser III. Okay. Now the Assyrian Empire back then, just like the Babylonian Empire, it wasn't just one. They would reign and then they would go down and they would come back again. And each time, it would be under, the second time or the third time they came back. So you had like the old, Assyrian Empire, then the middle Assyrian Empire, then the Neo Assyrian Empire, which would be the new Assyrian Empire. So right now, in this time, we're dealing with the Neo-Assyrian Empire. And when you read in Daniel, the 7th chapter, when Daniel has the vision about the beast, okay, that first beast with the wings, the lion with eagle's wings, that those wings represented the Assyrians. Okay. So now we're dealing with the Neo-Assyrian Empire, and really, it didn't really, pick up, to that level until you had this man, Tiglath-Pileser III, all right, come up in there. So he's the Pul that we're reading about here. And it says, 2 Kings 15 and 19, and Pul, the king of Assyria, came against the land, and Menahem gave Pul 1,000 talents of silver, that his hand might be with him to confirm the kingdom in his hand. Because at this time, the Assyrians are like the superpower. They're the empire ruling at the time. So what are they doing? They're going around campaigns, conquests, and they're subjecting the neighboring countries to them, right? So this guy's paying them, and eventually Israel would have to pay tribute to them, okay? And that's where the problem was found here. All right, so we have our first mention of the Assyrian king here, which it says Menahem paid him, all right, so that he might confirm the kingdom in his hand. All right, he might, set him up and allow him to rule, because all these other, kings would be basically like vassal kings under this empire that's ruling at the time. So now we're going to jump down to verse 29. It says here, so this is now after Menahem is done. It says, actually, I'll start at verse 27. It says, in the 52nd year of Azariah, king of Judah, all right, Pekah, the son of Remaliah, began to reign over Israel and Samaria, and reigned 20 years. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord. He departed not from the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat. All right, going into that idolatry. It says, and took the sin, it says here, Salakia, and departed not from the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, who made Israel to sin. Verse 29, in the days of Pekah, king of Israel, came Tiglath-Pileser, see, by name. Now, when you look this name up, he's an actual figure that lived. So how can you say that this is, when it comes to when the Bible has an account of it, it's fictional, but when you read it elsewhere, it's valid? So it says here, and Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, took Ijon and Abel Beth Maacah and Genoa and Kadesh and Hazor and Gilead and Galilee, all the land of Naphtali, and carried them captive to Assyria. So that was the beginning of deporting. All right, he came up in there and he deported, and all these lands that we're mentioning, notice you see Galilee, which is up north, Gilead, the land of Naphtali. Okay, now all right, actually, I'll just get it. Okay, when we go into the book of Tobit, Tobit was actually from the tribe, all right, of Naphtali. Okay, and when you read Tobit 1:1, he actually tells you, all right, I'm going to just read it. This is the book of Tobit, chapter 1, verse 1, it says, the book of the words of Tobit, the son of Tobiel, the son of Ananiel, the son of Aduel, the son of Gabiel, of the seed of Asiel, of the tribe of Naphtali. Okay, it says, who in the time of Enemeser, king of the Assyrians, was led captive out of Tishbe, which is at the right hand of that city, which is called properly Naphtali in Galilee above Asher. So Tobit here, it's letting you know. Now it says Enemeser, okay, because you know when you transliterate from the Greek, all right, or you transliterate from the Hebrew, the names won't sound exactly the same. Like sometimes the scriptures will refer to Nebuchadnezzar as Nebuchadnezzar. Sometimes it'll refer to him as Nebuchadrezzar, you know. So it's still talking about the same person. So this Enemeser here, all right, as we just read, in Second Kings here, you had Tiglath-Pileser that deported a lot of Israelites from where? Naphtali and the northern tribes. And Tobit happened to be in that region, and he was one of those that was deported. So when you read the book of Tobit, you realize that the setting, all right, that Tobit and Tobias and all that, that's not in Israel. Okay, the setting of the book of Tobit is in Media. It's in the east. Okay, that's why he sends his son to go to Rags, or I believe it was Rags or Ecbatane. Okay, that's all the way east, man. Okay, because they got deported, as we're reading about here in the book of Second Kings. All right. So it says here. So I just wanted to bring that out in Tobit just to add on to that point. Now going back to Second Kings. All right, Second Kings 15, continuing at 30. It says, and Hoshea, the son of Elah, made a conspiracy against Pekah, the son of Remaliah, and smote him and slew him, and reigned in his stead. So now the Pekah, who was ruling at the time, is gone, and now you got Hoshea. Okay, so it says here, and reigned in his stead in the 20th year of Jotham, the son of Uzziah. And then it just goes on, so on and so forth. So now from there, we're gonna jump a couple chapters ahead. All right, to Second Kings chapter 17. All right, and we're gonna start at the 4th verse. Okay, so it says, as a matter of fact, I'll start at the first verse. It says, in the 12th year of Ahaz, king of Judah, began Hoshea, the son of Elah, to reign in Samaria over Israel 9 years. So you have the Judite kings are there, they're reigning, and you have the northern the kings of the northern kingdom, or the northern kingdom, they're also reigning. All right. So now we're dealing with Hoshea. It says, verse 2, and he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, but not as the kings of Israel that were before him. So he went off, but not on the level of the previous kings before him. Verse 3, against him came up Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, and Hoshea became his servant and gave him presents. Now, the Assyrian king before Shalmaneser, and this Shalmaneser is the third, okay? The Assyrian king before Shalmaneser was Tiglath-Pileser, and Israel had to pay tribute because we were under them, okay? So now when Tiglath-Pileser comes, as we just read before in the 15th chapter, he deported, some of the northern kingdom, all right? But now he dies, and I believe it was his son, Shalmaneser III, is the next ruler. So normally, as a kingdom under, or a client kingdom, or a subjugated kingdom under an empire, if the empire has a new ruler, you still have to pay tribute to them. You just got to pay it now to this new ruler. However, oftentimes in the transition from one king to another, other nations who are subject to that empire will try to take advantage of that, and they'll try to, revolt, and take advantage of any turmoil, any court intrigue, all right, and try to revolt, all right. So Hoshea, now that Tiglath-Pileser is dead, Hoshea, the king of Israel, is now subject to who? Shalmaneser III, right? He has to pay tribute to him. Okay, so it says here, verse 3. Actually, I'll start at verse 2 again. It says, and he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, talking about King Hoshea, but not as the kings of Israel that were before him. Against him came up Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, and Hoshea became his servant and gave him presents. And the king of Assyria found conspiracy in Hoshea, for he had sent messengers to So, king of Egypt, and brought no present to the king of Assyria, as he had done year by year. All right. Therefore, the king of Assyria shut him up and bound him in prison. So now, when you give presents year by year, what is that? That's a tribute. All right. Now, Hosea tried to take advantage of the fact that there's a new Assyrian king. And as it says here, he was conspiring with Egypt. All right. And Shalmaneser found out about it. He was like, yo, this man stopped paying tribute. What's up? You know, come to find out, he's out here plotting things. So he ended up, like it says, they put him in prison. All right. Keep going, verse 5. It says, then the king of Assyria came up throughout all the land and went up to Samaria and besieged it 3 years. And this was the beginning of that siege that would lead to the northern kingdom, be the whole, all right, or the majority of the northern kingdom being deported out, all right, of those lands, all right, and into the lands, all right, over in the east. Okay, so it says here, he came and he besieged it 3 years. In the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria took Samaria and carried Israel away into Assyria, and placed them in Halah and in Habor by the river of Gozan, and in the cities of the Medes. All right. Now, one thing the Assyrians would do is, when they deport you out of your land, they do the same to others as well. So if they deport you out of your land and take you one place, they're going to deport somebody out of their land and take them to your land. All right. And what this also does is, well, you've been deported out of your land. You're in another foreign land. You don't know the people. You don't know the customs. It's going to be extremely difficult for you to try to organize a revolt. Okay. So that was a tactic that they used. That's why he had them, he deported them. But it was also through the spirit, because the Lord wanted them out of the land because they were polluting the land. All right. All right. So it says, verse 7, for so it was that the children of Israel had sinned against their power, which had brought them up out of the land of Egypt from under the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and had feared other gods. Now, notice this is the northern kingdom, all right, that got deported. So the southern kingdom, they're still there. Judah, Benjamin, Levi, they're still there. And of course, you had remnants of some of the northern tribes that were mixed in, that were, down there with them. Okay. It says, verse 8, and walked in the statutes of the heathen, whom the Lord cast out from before the children of Israel, and the kings of Israel, which they had made. And the children of Israel did secretly those things which were not right against the Lord their God. And they built them high places in all their cities, from the tower of the watchman to the fenced city. And they set them up images and groves in every high hill and under every green tree. And there they burnt incense in all the high places. All did the heathen whom the Lord carried away before them, and wrought wicked things to provoke the Lord to anger. All right. And just like we find ourselves in a foreign land today, that was because the Lord had the Lord was angry. It tells us that, as a matter of fact, here in the book of let's get it real quick, in the book of Baruch. All right, Baruch chapter 4, verse 6. It says, ye were sold to the nations, not for your destruction, but because ye moved the Most High to wrath, ye were delivered unto your enemies. So that's exactly what's happening here. We were delivered unto our enemies because we moved the Most High to wrath. All right. So it says, continuing on in verse 12, for they served idols, whereof the Lord had said unto them, ye shall not do this thing. All right. So because of all that wickedness and them going off and them being disobedient to the Lord, he had them taking out the land. All right. By setting up the Assyrians. All right. Namely, Shalmaneser III to come up in there. All right. I keep saying the third, but I believe it's the fifth. So let me just check that real quick just to make sure. The Assyrian king was Shalmaneser V. All right. Not Shalmaneser III. Okay. So Salakia on that. It's Shalmaneser V. All right, because I know I'm saying it, but it didn't sit right in my memory. It just hit me. I'm like, no, that's not the third, that's the fifth. All right, so the Assyrian king, all right, who besieged, the northern kingdom and took them out was Shalmaneser the fifth. Okay, um, and it's key to to understand the 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 succession, because Shalmaneser is not necessarily a name, just like Pharaoh, just like Darius, just like Antiochus. These are all like throne names, titles. All right, so that's why they'll say Darius the first, Darius the second. These are titles. All right, the second one to hold that title. Okay, so jumping down to verse 22. All right, in the same chapter, 2 Kings chapter 17. All right, verse 22. It says, "For the children of Israel walked in all the sins of Jeroboam, which he did. They departed not from them, until the Lord removed Israel out of his sight, as he said by all his servants the prophets. So was Israel carried away out of their own land to Assyria unto this day." All right. And now, from that point, when the northern kingdom was taken out of the land of Israel, remember in the prophecy, all right, Deuteronomy 28, there's a part of that also that says, ye shall see it no more. All right, and that happened. They didn't get to go back. All right, the majority of them didn't go back. All right, to the land of Israel, but we're gonna read where they went. Okay, so we just read that in here. Now you have the northern kingdom is no more in the land of Israel. All right, I'm talking about the most part of them, because you always had those little remnants mixed in. So now you're left with the southern kingdom in the land of Israel. But what also is happening? You have heathens. Okay, you have heathens now the Assyrian kings deported, all right, or imported into the northern kingdom's land. And this is that history that goes on to where in the New Testament you have the Lord and the Samaritans. All right, that's why Jake had no dealings with the Samaritans, because the majority of those Samaritans go back to those heathens who were put into that land. All right, those Samaritans were not Israelites, although you had Israelites living among them. They weren't Israelites; they were heathens. But they practiced our customs. They built their own temple over there, and they try to, basically claim as though that they were Israelites. Okay, and that's why the Lord told the woman, ye know not what ye worship. All right, but we know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews. Okay, because that goes back to that history of the northern kingdom being deported out. So now you have the northern kingdom is out. They're in Assyria. They're captive over there. They're serving the Assyrians. All right. The southern kingdom is over here. They're still in their land. Okay, but they're gonna get theirs. you know. And around this time, you had certain various prophets that were prophesying onto them, because prior to the northern kingdom getting deported, the Lord always sent prophets. Okay, He sent prophets to prophesy onto them, let them know, hey, look, whatever you're doing, you're going off. Stop, repent. Amos, okay, Nahum, all of them. And what did Jake do? Like they always do. Hey, no, I don't. You know what I'm saying? Don't. They pull the shoulder. We ain't trying to hear that right now. Get your ass back to the southern kingdom. Don't come tell us how to serve our gods. And that was what pissed off the Lord. Okay, but through a succession of time, the Lord eventually, as a matter of fact, let me get that precept here in the book of Daniel. All right, the Lord, the time was up for the Assyrian Empire to rule. So when you go to Daniel chapter 7, all right, and also Daniel the 4th chapter. Actually, we'll start at Daniel 4. Daniel chapter 4, verse 17. This matter is by the decree of the watchers, and the demand by the word of the holy ones, to the intent that the living may know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will, and setteth up over it the basest of men. So the Most High is the one who decides who's going to rule next and who's not going to rule, when an empire is going to go down, when an empire is going to rise. All right. So now let's go to Daniel 7. All right. And we're going to start at verse 4. It says, the first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. Now that first beast, a lion with eagle's wings, represented the Assyrio-Babylonian Empire. Okay, Assyrians were ruling, and that was the let me read it. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. Now those eagle's wings was the Assyrians. Okay, It says, and I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked. And that was when the Assyrian Empire fell. And when they fell, how did they fall? They were taken down by the Babylonians and the Medes. Okay? It says, so the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. So when the Assyrians fell down, when they got taken out of power, that was what? The rise of the Babylonian Empire. All right, that's why they were able to stand up on their feet. That was the rise of the Babylonian Empire. Okay, so now we're gonna go and deal with the account of how it fell. All right, because the Assyrians, when the Assyrian Empire was there, which I believe their capital was Nineveh, okay, remember, Jonah, all right, the Lord has sent Jonah to prophesy against the Assyrians, telling them that they will be destroyed. But they weren't destroyed because they repented. They weren't destroyed at that very moment. But eventually the Lord still destroyed their empire, okay? So now we're going to go to the book of Tobit, all right, chapter 14, okay, and I have it written down here, all right, starting at the 3rd verse. Okay, so it says here, because at the falling, all right, of the Assyrian Empire, it fell because you had different, other nations that took it down. Okay, that's how these empires fall. The empire falls to whoever took it down, and that nation rules. Okay, so at the time you had the Medes, okay, the Medes over there, which were unified and ruled over by Cyaxares, okay, the father of Darius the Mede. Okay, so they were over there, and what he was doing was he was getting revenge. He was preparing to launch a coalition against the Assyrians. Okay, but at the same time, you had Nabopolassar, the father of Nebuchadnezzar II, all right, who also was trying to take down the Assyrian empire. All right, so they found out that they actually had common interests, and they said, okay, let's join forces, the Babylonians and the Medes, all right, and let's take down, all right, the Assyrian Empire. And that's exactly what they did. And we're going to read about that here in the book of Tobit. Okay, they took it down, and then they basically ruled, all right, jointly. But the scriptures focus more on the Babylonian rulership, because that's what affected us. That's when Nebuchadnezzar came up in there, burnt the temple, you know what I'm saying, besieged it and took us out and made us captives. At that time, the Medes were ruling, okay? But they were, they were doing their own thing over there. Okay, so that's why we don't really hear much about them. So when we hear about the Medo-Persian Empire, yes, the Medes did rule at one point. Okay, but the Persians took over, and they were the ones who we really hear about. All right, so now let's go to the book of Tobit, chapter 14. All right, verse 3 says, and when he was very aged, he called his sons and the six sons of his son, and said to him, my son. All right, and this is Tobit, I believe, speaking to Tobias, all right, or the rest of his sons. It says, my son, take thy children, for behold, I am aged and am ready to depart out of this life. Go into Media, my son, for I surely believe those things which Jonas, which is the Greek of Jonah, all right, Jonas the prophet spake of Nineveh. It says that it shall be overthrown, and that for a time peace shall rather be in Media, and that our brethren shall lie scattered in the earth from that good land, and Jerusalem shall be desolate. All right, and the house of God in it shall be burned, and the house and shall be desolate for a time. Now, this is spiritual, because what Tobit is telling Tobias hasn't happened yet. Because Tobit is telling Tobias, look, I'm about to die. Leave wherever you at, go to Media, because as prophesied by Jonah, when the Assyrian Empire gets overthrown, Nineveh is going to fall. All right, but there's going to be peace in Media. So go over there, take your family, and go over there. You'll be peace. There'll be peace over there. Okay, but he also mentions now. All right, he also mentions it says, and that our brethren shall lie scattered in the earth from that good land, and Jerusalem shall be desolate, and the house of God in it shall be burned, and shall be desolate for a time. Now, at this point in time, when he's telling this to Tobias, Jerusalem wasn't destroyed yet, because Jerusalem was going to be destroyed and burnt by the Babylonians. Okay, but at this time they hadn't taken over. The Assyrians yet, so they hadn't come into that full power, to in turn burn Jerusalem. So this was spiritual, because he was of course referring to what Jonah said, but it was also prophetic. All right, it says because that's exactly what happened when the Babylonians came and besieged Jerusalem. They burnt it. They burnt the temple. They destroyed the walls. All right. So verse 5, Tobit 14:5, it says, and that again the Most High will have mercy on them, all right, the Israelites, and bring them again into the land where they shall build a temple, but not like to the first, until the time of that age be fulfilled. And afterward they shall return from all places of their captivity, and build up Jerusalem gloriously, and the house of God shall be built in it forever, for a glorious building, as the prophets have spoken thereof. So now this is spiritual, because it's prophetic, all right? Because in this time that we in, when the Lord brings us back, and Jerusalem gets built, it's gonna remain forever, all right? But it's also spiritual, because this is what happened, all right, when Cyrus gave the decree and Israel was let free from Babylon. All right, we were able to come back under Zerubbabel and Joshua the high priest to what? To rebuild the temple, and then under Nehemiah to finish building the walls. Okay, so it was talking about then, but it's also talking about in the future. All right, because it says here it's going to be forever. Now we know the temple that Zerubbabel and the fathers that they built, that didn't last forever, because fast forward 70 AD, what happened? Titus, all right, Vespasian and Titus, okay, which was more Titus in the latter end, destroyed it. The Roman Empire, they destroyed it in the siege of Jerusalem. All right, so clearly it didn't last forever. All right, but in the kingdom, who the hell's gonna come destroy the temple? Who's gonna even, that's not gonna happen. All right. So now from there, so Tobit is his warning Tobias, look, get out of here, go to Media, because the prophecy that Jonah had prophesied, what he had said, I believe is gonna come to pass. So go, all right, because the Assyrians are about to get overthrown. All right. So now we're gonna jump down to Tobit 14, same chapter, but we're gonna jump down to the 8th verse. It says, and now my son, depart out of Nineveh, because those things which the prophet Jonas spake shall surely come to pass. All right. And now from verse 8, we're going to jump down to verse 14. It says, and he died in Ecbatane in Media. All right. So Tobit tells his son Tobias, leave. Tobias takes the advice. He takes his family and he leaves. He goes to Ecbatane in Media. All right, so what we're reading of in verse 14 is what happened. Okay, it says here, and he died. All right, Tobias, he died in Ecbatane in Media, being 107 and 20 years old. But before he died, he heard of the destruction of Nineveh, which was taken by Nabuchodonosor and Ahasuerus, and before his death, he rejoiced over Nineveh. All right. So right there shows you that Tobias, all right, the warning that his father gave him to leave, all right, so he doesn't partake in the destruction. Hey, he was wise to obey that warning. Okay, he was wise to obey that warning. Now, it says that he left, all right, but he heard about the destruction. But key words here, it says Nineveh, which was taken, meaning it was taken down by who? Nabuchodonosor, which is a Greek transliteration of Nabopolassar, because he was the actual one with Cyaxares, all right, that took it down. Okay, so Nabuchodonosor and Ahasuerus, all right, but that Ahasuerus is referring to Cyaxares when you look it up in the secular history. Okay, it says, and before his death he rejoiced over Nineveh, which is accurate when you once again when you look it up. Now I'm doing a stream here, so I can't pull it up. All right, but you feel free to do your own research. Okay, now before I move on to the next verse, what I will say is when you read these scriptures, you know, especially dealing with the history, sometimes the names can get a little trippy based on how they're transliterated. All right. You have when you read in, for example, Daniel 9. All right, let me go to it. Daniel chapter 9. All right, because you know we know about Darius the Mede. All right, but I also understand that there was a Persian king also called Darius. Okay, so we know and we understand that the Medes and the Persians are two different nations. They're not of the same nation. So when you go to Daniel chapter 9, all right, verse 1, it says, in the first year of Darius, the son of Ahasuerus, of the seed of the Medes, which was made king over the realm of the Chaldeans. Don't get tripped up because you see the name Ahasuerus. Because yes, when you go to the book of Esther, you're going to see the same name Ahasuerus over there. All right. But it's not talking about the same person. All right. When you look it up in the dictionary section of the Blue Letter, it tells you that this name Ahasuerus, all right, is used, all right, also for the Persian king Xerxes. Okay. But over here is referring on to the father of Darius the Mede. So all you got to do is look up, you know, which Darius the Mede, historically, his name is Astyages. You just got to look up his father, and it'll tell you that it's Cyaxares. So just because you see Ahasuerus here, all right, doesn't mean that it's talking about the one main one that you know about in the book of Esther, because you're going to get confused. Because you'll say, but hold up, Ahasuerus, when you go and find another precept where Ahasuerus, you're going to see he's talking about the husband of Esther. But he was a Persian. So why is it saying here in Daniel 9:1 that he was of the seed of the Medes? But you got to understand that it's in the name, okay? It's in the name, so don't get tripped up by that. All right, now, so we covered the northern kingdom got deported, okay? And then the fall of the Assyrian Empire. So what happens now to the northern kingdom after their captors have fallen? Okay, we're going to go here to the book of 2nd Ezra, chapter 13. All right, and starting at verse 39. It says, and whereas thou sawest that he gathered another peaceable multitude unto him, those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hosea. Now that Hosea is Hoshea. All right, Hoshea the king. Okay, and we just read that in the book of 2nd Kings. All right, how Hoshea, the Assyrian king, found conspiracy in Hoshea, and he came and besieged Samaria, and he deported the northern kingdom out of their land. That's what we're reading about here in 2nd Ezra. All right, so pay attention. So it says, those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners, they were deported, out of their own land, all right, the northern kingdom. It says, in the time of Hosea, or Hoshea the king, whom Shalmaneser, all right, Shalmaneser the fifth, the king of Assyria, led away captive, and he carried them over the waters, and so came they into another land. We read about that. Now, what happened after that? They served, you know, under the Assyrians until the Assyrians fell. And when the Assyrians went down, okay, it says here in verse 41, but they took this counsel among themselves, that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt. Because they being in the land of of Assyria, you have heathens around about. Of course, their land is in Israel, but you got, you know, the Persians around, you got the Syrians, all right, around, you got the Babylonians, you got the Canaanite, you know, all that's the multitude of the heathens round about them. So they said, you know what, we're just gonna leave this area and we're gonna go to a further land where mankind never dwelt. Now it says never dwelt. It doesn't say never went there before, but it says never dwelt, meaning to form a habitation over there. Because we read about King Solomon and his navy, all right, they came here to the Americas, all right, or his navy came, all right, and they would, you know, come and bring some you know, different minerals and riches and, you know, certain things like that back for King Solomon. Okay, so they were familiar, all right, and they knew that this land of America existed, but they never moved here to dwell here. So the northern kingdom said, all right, we gonna go and dwell over there because we don't want to get bothered by these heathens anymore. All right, verse 42, that they might there keep their statutes which they never kept in their own land. And because what, they were going off in their own land. All right, it says, and they entered into Euphrates by the narrow passages of the river. Why? Because when you look on a map, I don't know if this if this Bible has it. All right, but when you look on a map, you'll see how Assyria, all right, is not far from the Euphrates River. Okay, and you can go through the Euphrates to exit south and around the back end of Africa, come all the way down, down the continent of Africa, and then move on to your left and start heading towards the Americas. Okay. Yeah, they're not showing. Yeah, they don't really. This one doesn't really have the map. My other one does, but you could always look it up. All right, so they enter the Euphrates, okay, by the narrow passages of the river, for the Most High then showed signs for them, and held still the flood till they were passed over. Okay, so could it have been a chariot, whatever it could have been. The Most High showed signs that directed them in where to go. Okay, but he also held those storms and the tempestuous winds, and so on and so forth in that area, so that they could safely, make their journey across, because there was prophecy that they had to come here to the Americas. All right, or let's say it was the will of the Most High that they had to come here to the Americas. All right, so it says, verse 45, for through that country there was a great way to go, namely of a year and a half. And the same region is called Arsareth. All right, and that is America. All right, which if I remember correctly, Arsareth is Arataza. All right, if I'm not mistaken, you can look it up, but it means another land. Okay, and that's where they came, and this is where they've been dwelling until, well, now. Okay, so now you know how the northern kingdom, which there's much more details in it, but I'm not gonna go through all of that. We'll be here, for I don't even know how long. But when you do your research on it, you'll see, okay, that's how the northern kingdom. That's why they're no more in, all right, that the land of Israel. Okay, so that even in itself is history showing you where the Israelites are at, or even if you want to deal with the northern kingdom, where they're at. You can trace history because there's historical records of the Israelites existing in the land of Israel. But there's historical records of what happened to them. And if you trace that history, you'll find out where they are today. You'll find out the northern kingdom came to the Americas. Okay, so if they were the first people to dwell, meaning to have a habitation in the Americas, when you had the Europeans come over here thinking they were the first people, right? Come over here, who did they meet? They met who? The Native Americans, the Seminole Indians, right? The North American Indians, right? The Mexicans, the Aztecs, Incas. So who would those people be? Who would they have to be? So the northern kingdom disappears from the east, and then you have some people that just appear in the west. The Bible tells you how they got here, all right? So at least you know that these people, those of Taino descent and all that, guess what? You go back to the northern tribes, all right? So we found where the northern kingdom is at. Now you wanna find the southern kingdom. You just trace the history of the southern kingdom. All right, you trace the history of the southern kingdom, which says, all right, after the northern kingdom got deported, Jake was in there. The Babylonians came. They took us over. After the Babylonians, the Persians. After the Persians, the Greeks. But we were still in our land, right? After the Greeks, the Romans, we were still in our land. And then during the time of the Romans, we fled out of our land. But where did we go? Some of us went into Europe. Some of us went into Africa. Some of us fled to neighboring nations. Okay. And now, who was in Africa? All right. The Hamites were already there. But there's numerous historical records. All right. When you do the research on it, that show that those slaves that got taken off of the west coast of Africa and brought to the Americas, guess what? When you trace the history, they go back to those Israelites that fled from Jerusalem during the time of the siege. All right, and there's some in Europe that fled from Jerusalem during the time of the siege. Okay, so you can trace history to find out where the Israelites are today. So if somebody tells you that they don't exist, they just died off. How? Where's the record on that? You know, the scriptures say there's no end to the people, and just like you can trace our history, you can find out where Esau is at today. You know, and ultimately that's why they took this out of this. All right, they took this book out of this book because this book helps you trace how the 10 tribes got here, but also how to find out who Esau Edom is today. All right, so I'm gonna end it here. You know, Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. You know, always feel free to do more, you know, research and dig in. All right, but you know, just wanted to bring that out real quick. I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rechak Kodash. Until next time, Shalom.